personally, I don't wait. And normally if you find someone that's somewhere that's famous or everybody knows about, you gotta wait 30 minutes, hour and a half. So I never wait for, food. I just go to the next place. But there are certain people who really want something really specific. And so just last weekend, I asked my two good friends, Yoshi and Carrie Ann, who are really foodies and connoisseurs of food, not only in Japan, in the world. They've traveled all over the world. And I said, and they have waited many a time. And I said, what is the percentage of times that you have waited that you felt the food was worth waiting for? And they told me 50%. So it's a 1 in 2 shot. So I think that, if you want to wait and you want the bragging rights that you ate at so-and-so place, then yeah, wait, of course. But if you're more like me and not very patient and you don't have that much time in that area or that place or in Japan, then you might just want to move on to the next place. So again, it's completely up to you. And another reason that sometimes if you tell everyone where the special ramen or udon place is, suddenly you have so many people going there that people cannot get in. So it's kind of a hard thing to say. But anyway, if you go onto YouTube and you type in anything like best tonkatsu in Tokyo or best ramen in Kyoto, you're gonna have a lot of videos that come out, and that should give you more enough of a hint of where to go. And the other thing is that a lot of times, myself included, foreigners cannot tell so much the actual difference between different ramens, udon, unless they are chefs or connoisseurs or foodies. In that case, yes. But for most people, it's hard to really distinguish between, different types of ramen or different types of udon, I have never really had any bad ramen or udon or tonkatsu. So, some maybe average, some a little below average, but nothing bad. So if you are not so particular, I think it's a great idea to, it's up to you. You want to wait, great. And if you don't, basically what I'm saying is that I don't wait. And if you want to wait, that's fine. Okay. So I was just saying that I've been in Japan about 30 years. One of the reasons is that I really, really, I guess, love Japan. There are many, many frustrating parts about Japan that kind of make me a little bit crazy. But on the other hand, it's a very safe country. People are really kind. They have this idea of omote nashi. Omote nashi basically means do as much as you can or do everything for the guest. That's their magic word. That's what they supposedly won the Tokyo 2020 Olympics with that speech about omotenashi. But Japan definitely, to me, has the best service in the entire world. And second, it's a safe country. Imagine a country of 127 million people and, crowded. Think of Japan. Japan's size. Do you know the land, put them all together, the land mass is only the size of California. So imagine you have a country the size of the state of California in the United States, and you have 127 million people, which is about maybe 1/3, little over 1/3 of what's in the United States, the population. And then you take away 80% because 80% is mountainous and uninhabitable. So you got 127 people living in 20% of California. And that's why things are very crowded and very tight and very small, and land is quite hard here. So really, Japan, for that kind of tight situation, for those of you who read the book by James Clavell called King Rat, where when everything gets too tight, the rats start eating each other. Fortunately, in Japan, the opposite has happened. Is everyone works really hard to get along. And there's also the idea of island thinking, right? Like I'm from Hawaii. And you have to get along because there's no place to run to, or you live on an island, you try to get along. So there's also that. But again, those 2 points, service and safety, unbeatable. And number 3, which is only recent, is this is the best deal in town right now, right? The yen last week was between 157 and 160, which basically means, if I'm just calculating back a couple of years, it used to be about 110 to 120. That's basically a 30% discount on everything. Everything's on a fire sale almost, like, which is really like fortunate, right? So it's a great time to come. It's a safe country, great service, and very, very reasonable. So think about it. Where to travel, right? There's like the Silk Road, I call. That's like from Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, Nara, and some people go to Hiroshima. So, first time I would suggest that, most people do that route, but it's the most heavily traveled route. So in that way, it's actually quite crowded. And so recently you see the government in Japan try to get tourists to go to other areas, as well as I think for the tourists, they prefer to go to places where, there are less people, right? I was just in Kyoto during cherry blossom season here, and wow, it was like crazy. So I live 30 minutes outside of Kyoto, between Nara and Kyoto, and I had a couple of videos about Idecho, where I go for cherry blossoms. I'm the only one. I'm the only one in the whole riverbank, right? Like looking at the cherry blossoms, and I go, wow, this is how Ohanami, cherry blossoms, is supposed to be, right? But if you go to Kyoto, there are more people than cherry blossom. I mean, I'm joking, of course, but there's so many people. So you may want to consider, like, once you've done the Silk Route, or even if you haven't done the Silk Route yet, and you want to have more of less people around, then consider going to outside areas. Not as famous, but maybe it's not as famous because people haven't gone there yet, right? I mean, let me give you an example. For those of you who have studied Japanese for a long time, you may have used, like, I think 30 years ago, I was using the book called Naganuma and the textbook. They don't even use this anymore. It was like right after the war, it came out. That book talks about different things that we're studying in Japanese. And one of them were called Nihon Sankei. Nihon Sankei are the 3 great sites in Japan. The 3 were, one was Amanohashidate, then North Kyoto. The second was Miyajima in Hiroshima, and the third was Matsushima in Sendai. 3 different places. And this was considered Nihon Sankei. Now, younger people probably won't know this in Japan, but older people, if you ask the Nihon Sankei, they'll talk about it. But when you really compare it now to all the other places that people go, like I love Miyajima. I went to Sendai just a couple of years ago, and I've been to Amanohashidate twice. I think it's it's nice, but I wouldn't say it's the 3 best in Japan. So again, I think it's more people haven't had opportunities to go. So maybe you could be the one to discover the new place, right? I see a question here. Do you suggest that first-time visitors go outside the Golden Triangle of Kyoto, Tokyo, and Osaka? Good question. It really is up to you. If you want to feel just kind of comfortable and get your bearings, then I say, yeah, just do the Silk Route and get a taste of it. And then the next time you come, you can choose to go outside. Or if you're more adventurous, you can dabble in maybe, a couple of days in Tokyo, a couple of days in Kyoto, and then maybe go wide. You could go to maybe Hiroshima, where a lot of people are starting to go. The big news is I see on television, and the New York Times said one of the 52 places to go in 2024 is Yamaguchi Prefecture. Now, Yamaguchi Prefecture is way to the west of Hiroshima. And most people didn't know about it until the New York Times put it into the paper, which is like, great for Yamaguchi. Now, what happens is that Yamaguchi has really, really deep history. It's connected. So if you know Japanese history or you study Japanese history before you come, Yamaguchi, I think, would be great because it talks about, the overthrow of the government, the Bakufu, the Satsucho, that whole movement that led to the opening up of Japan, the samurai against the shogunate. And so a lot of that was all from Yamaguchi. In fact, Hagi, I can't remember exactly, but a large number of prime ministers in Japan have all come from Hagi, which is a small city in West Japan, in Yamaguchi. I mean, people may have heard of Hagiyaki, the famous ceramic ware, but even I think, Abe, Prime Minister Abe, who was, assassinated a couple of years ago, he's from Shimonoseki, and that's all in Yamaguchi. So a lot of historical history with the movement, the overthrow, not the overthrow, but the changeover into opening up Japan, and the whole samurai system against the new modern era happened in Yamaguchi. So, great place to go. But Yamaguchi is not ready for people to come yet, right? They're still getting ready. They expect maybe another 900,000 maybe next year. And there's a couple of things that they still are dealing with, like the temple. I think it was the pagoda. I can't remember the name, such with an R. It's now being renovated, and it won't be ready until 2025. So if you go, you may want to either wait, or if you don't mind not seeing the pagoda, then that's fine. Now, you could see other pagodas. In Kyoto, we have a lot of pagodas here. And the three main pagodas are, I can't remember the name, but there's one in Kyoto, and there is Horyuji in Nara, and the third is the one in Yamaguchi. What is interesting about Japan is that Japan likes the number 3. So you have 3 various, like I talked about Nihon Sanke, the 3, 1, 2, 3, right? So, you have the 3 Sanke. So everything's in 3s. The 3 famous gardens. Do you know the 3 famous gardens in Japan? I don't know. I can't remember the name, but it's Kanazawa, Ibaraki, and Okayama. The 3 famous night views in Japan. If you want to see the night views, the harbor night views, it's Kobe, Nagasaki, and Hakodate. So you may want to do a tour that you go and visit all these 3, although that they're in various parts of the country sometimes. So again, Japan likes 3. 3 famous ceramics, 3 famous, I just said pagodas. Only one nights. It's really up to you as far as venturing out. But maybe for the first time you do the Silk Road. And then again, the question is, do you want to come when it's super busy or off season? And of course, if possible, a little bit off season would be better than hitting, like, they talk about Golden Week when the Japanese are moving, Sakura season, which everybody wants to come, but again, it's really up to you. Obon, which is the middle of August, and then Oshogatsu, which is New Year's. Those are the 3 big that the Japanese are moving. It's kind of busy. A lot of people have vacation off and everybody's moving. So, some people discourage people from coming in rainy season. And it depends on the year. Sometimes it does rain quite a bit, but other times it doesn't. But I would say something like, if I was in Okinawa last year for a month in training, and Okinawa's rainy season, it's serious. It's a serious rainy season that every single day we got bombarded, like heavy duty rain and winds, like the umbrella can barely hold. And I was staying at a hotel that was only like 5 minutes away, and just to do that walk was not, I got wet all the time. Rainy season, not Okinawa, but maybe Honshu. And people always say that Hokkaido doesn't have a rainy season. And I don't know, I guess that's true because the way the weather system works. So Hokkaido might be a place to go in the rainy season, which is June. Again, on the years that it doesn't rain that much, it's still a little bit, it rains some, like during the day. Like a day like today, it's kind of cloudy, outcast today, but nothing too much. You got an umbrella, and it's not like, not like in Okinawa. So again, that's up to you. Susan has asked the question, what is the best way to learn how to speak Japanese to use when traveling? Okay, it's a little bit late to start learning. However, I would definitely suggest that, it's like when you travel to any country, you try to learn like the main 10 things, like, right? Thank you, I'm sorry, maybe numbers, like where's the toilet, like just simple things. And of course, things like arigatou gozaimasu, it really makes the Japanese so happy that you're trying. Any country that you try to speak the language, people feel very, very, happy and touched. So I definitely would learn the 10 before you come if possible, like numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, try and learn the 10, basic phrases. Now, before you come, if you could learn words like simple sentence patterns, like where is, like toilet. Okay, toilet, bathroom in America, bathroom or restroom, they say toire or toiletto. Toilet, and then you put wa doko desu ka, which basically means where's the toilet. Then you can put anything in this little box. Yeah, ramen shop or ramen mise wa doko desu ka, where's the ramen shop? Or todaiji wa doko desu ka, where is todaiji? So yes, I would say like there's 3 basic simple phrases that would help you to get around. Because although people say that Japan is an English-speaking country, well, they all study it for minimum 6 years in junior high school and high school if they go all the way through high school. And many in the university study for another 2, maybe 4 years. So some may have between 6 and 10 years, but it doesn't mean people can actually communicate. It's mainly about what do you call, grammar. And so if you show them, they can read, they can see it, and then they have an easier time. So maybe if you have your phone, and you do like a Google Translate or something, and then you just show them, I'm going to go here or whatever. Or it says, like I use DeepL program, and some people use Google Translate. I use both. Both are fine. And I'll type it in what I want. And then you can just show them like it's in Japanese. So then they can help you. So yes, I would say learn the basics. Now, some people say, well, you can't get into a deep conversation. And sorry, unless you really study the language many years before to get there, it is hard. But it's okay, because the reverse side of that is when you're traveling to a new country, there's a lot of excitement about when someone understands what you said, right? So you ask something in Japanese like, toilet wa doko desu ka? And then they take you to the toilet. And you feel like, wow, it works. And it reinforces and motivates you to want to study or learn, know more, right? So yes, even the simplest, words, and that's what I suggest for everyone. You don't have to speak Japanese fluently, but try. And the Japanese are always happy. Now, as far as English speakers, Japan is very limited. You compare it to a country like, let's say, like Thailand, for example, like Bangkok, I'm going to say, which is a tourist, city. A lot more people speak English in Bangkok than like here in maybe Tokyo. And so, it's like the use, all the Japanese are studying it. But remember, for most of them, it's an academic subject. It's like studying math or science, English. No one's using it for like communication. And there's a whole nother story there about they brought the JET program. For those of you who know, the JET program is they send before between 5 and 10,000 Americans or from Australia or different places to Japan. They work in the junior high schools, the high schools, now the elementary. But really, because it's all about the test and getting into a better junior high, getting to a better high school, getting into a better university, that the study of is all about the written and not the spoken. So in that case, I would say Japan is way behind in conversational and communicative English. So just keep that in mind. Again, though, if you show them a sentence, which is kind of sometimes tiresome or takes time, a lot of people will understand. So again, that's up to you. Okay, I don't see any more questions. If you have any questions, please list them down and I'll try and address as best as I can. As I said before, I'm not the guru, I'm not the expert, but I can, after 30 years of being in Japan and doing an array of things, I can give you at least a common sense idea. A couple other things I was going to mention was that today I'm not going to go too long, maybe 30, 40 minutes, just because I don't want to bore you. Maybe there's only like, I don't know how many of you are out there. But, like, for example, there's Hokkaido and there's Okinawa, there's Honshu, Kyushu, Shikoku. I want to tell you a story about a friend. When I first came to Japan when I was 23 years old, many, many moons ago, I was traveling with Mr. Walsh, Mr. Peter Walsh. Mr. Walsh was probably about 65 at that time. And he was teaching me, we're doing company classes, so we would go out. And one day, me and Mr. Walsh were having lunch, and he loves Japan. He'd been in Japan longer than he had been in the United States. And Mr. Walsh told me, Mike, Japan is such a rich and interesting country that you could travel a different place every month for your entire lifetime and not see it all. So that was his take on it. Now, some people say like, Japan, the houses and things are all very similar and there's not that much difference. But I think the more deep you go into Japan, the more you understand the differences. Some of them are very slight, like a nuance, but the dialect and the words they use, the dialect also reflects how people think. Osaka Ben, Osaka dialect versus Tokyo, and the different words they use, a word like, don't use this word in Japan, but like, there's the word baka, which means stupid or dumb. And there's the word aho, which basically means the same thing. But at least according to my friends, they say that if you use the word aho, like garlic in Spanish, aho, if you use aho in Osaka, it's kind of light, Of course, it's their tone and how you say it also, right? But it's aho. It's kind of light, like, oh, you silly thing, or But if you use the word aho in Tokyo, baka is more light, not light, but baka is more neutral, but aho is much more strong and people get like upset. So it's a simple thing like that, like you got little nuance like that, the way people think, I think my friend Yoshi was just telling me last week, he said there's a word called, oh, it was interesting. There was like one piece of chicken left, and then he used the word enyo gatari. I can't remember exactly, but basically it means that don't hold back, because like in Japan, enyo, ENRYO, is like a virtue. It means that you hesitate or you hold back or you think of someone else before you. So the last piece of chicken no one takes because you don't want to be the one. You want somebody else to have it or whatever. So in Osaka, they have a word that says, oh, don't enyo, or don't hold back, for the last piece of chicken or whatever is there. And Yoshi said that when he said that in Tokyo, nobody understood him. So there's also a difference like that. Yeah. So again, nuance is very interesting. So yes, Japan is still, it's not as diverse as some other countries in different parts, but yet there still is a very distinct differences when you go deeper and into it. Are we supposed to wear masks in Japan, even if it's not required? No, you don't have to wear a mask. I still wear a mask when I go to the company because the train is crowded. I do that for, during the mask time, I was a person who was like, I never wearing a mask, I had never wore a mask in Japan for all those years until COVID came to Japan, and then I finally had to wear a mask. But now it's a choice. Now, I live in Kyoto Nabe, which is rural Japan. So when I go to the supermarket, all those people are older, because this is an older district. I should go outside of the main urban areas, the people are older. Everyone except me is wearing a mask. So it's a little strange. I'm older and I'm like them, and I'm sure they're looking at me going, who is this guy, right? How come he doesn't pay attention to the social norms? I don't know. I don't. And since they're all wearing a mask, I figure I'm safe because they're wearing a mask, right? And then, but when I go to Osaka or Kyoto City, most people are not. I would say 30% are wearing, 70 are not. That's in Kyoto. Osaka would be even less because it's a more fast-moving city. And when you have younger people, of course, you're going to have less people wearing masks. So you do not have to wear masks. It's completely up to you. I have another friend, Carrie Ann. She wears her mask because of her own choice, pretty much wherever we go. She's from Hawaii. But she feels like, she's careful. So you can put it on or take it off. It's completely up to you. When is the best time to visit Hokkaido? By Ben Yosako. Thank you, Ben. And have you been to the ice festival in Sapporo? So it depends on what you want to see in Hokkaido. I made a couple videos, some shorts. You may have seen it. If you're interested in watching some of my videos, the URL is down below in the description. You can click on that and subscribe. But I talked about Hokkaido. Hokkaido is probably my favorite place in Japan. And it's because, and I had lived in Alaska for 7 years also. I love that outdoor, that free, So how I would end up here in Kyoto, a little crowded and things, who knows. But anyway, the best time to go to Hokkaido, if you want to see the lavender, the purple flowers, which are beautiful, and the sunflowers, and by then they're starting to harvest. The court will be July. Probably beginning of July through July, maybe sometimes even end of June, but July. Now, for those of you who have done tours, and a lot of you have, I know, you may have come to Hokkaido in fall, September usually, maybe up to beginning of October, because it starts to get cold already, right? That's the best time for the food because the fish is being harvested, salmon, they're harvesting food. They have grown, the farming country is up in Hokkaido. They're harvesting everything, so everything's fresh and good. If you want to come to eat and you love seafood, then definitely you come in the fall. If you want to see the flowers, the lavender and sunflower, then you can come in July. And if you want to come and see the snow festival, I think it's the second weekend in February. You might want to check that, but the second week in February. I went 2 years ago, but it was canceled because of COVID. But I've been to the ice festival 3 times. I enjoy it. It used to be very, very cold. Now with global warming and weather change, sometimes by the second week of February, the sculptures or the ice, the snow, what do you call, designs are all starting to melt. So again, that's, kind of hit or miss. But again, it'll be the second week of February. I do recommend it. It's fun. It's kind of a festival. And they created that because they were somebody had a great idea that tried to generate income. How do we generate income for people to come, right? So what they decided was, okay, we're going to do, create an event in the middle of February. And, back, I don't know how many years ago, when everything was still really cold during February, the coldest time of the year, they started the Yuki Matsuri. And it's the self-defense forces, the military, that helps build all of those snow sculptures and some of the ice ones too. The ice sculptures down, I think it's Odori, and then there's snow sculptures the other places. And it's really something to see, and it generates a lot of income for Sapporo. The only problem though, as many of you who have been to the Yuki Matsuri know, it's expensive because 2 million people come through at that time. I think it was 2 million people. So imagine, your hotels are expensive, so you gotta book, kind of in advance and things, and get the flight up from Tokyo up, or somehow or another route. But usually that flight too, you want to buy it if you're coming up from outside of Japan all the way through, because it's one of the most expensive routes, the Tokyo Sapporo route, if you're not using an LCC, low cost carrier, if you buy it individually. I think there was some data, I don't know if it's still true, but a couple of years ago, where they said that route, for that amount of kilometers or miles, was the most expensive route in Japan. Another expensive route is like Tokyo down to Okinawa also. So if you can get it on your main ticket, I think it's cheaper. Have you been to Nemuro or Wakanai? Okay, Nemuro, Wakanai. Yes, I have been there long ago. In fact, just yesterday, I met the 3 people from this bicycle trip. When I was a graduate student at Doshisha University in Kyoto, I rode up my bike around Hokkaido for 2 months, camping and going along with 3 others. Usui-san, Titis from Indonesia, Usui-san was Japanese, and Rau from Argentina, who today is a governor of Catamarca in Argentina. He wasn't there yesterday, but we all got together. So yes, we rode through Nemuro. And when I broke off from the group, I rode up to Wakanai. The following year, I went back again. So I went 2 months and then a month. Wakanai is the northernmost point of Hokkaido. And it's just to say I've been on the northernmost point, take the picture. You can see the ocean. I wouldn't say there's anything that special. But if you go during winter, there's certain times when you start to see the ice flow come in. I heard that's really neat to see. I don't know if you can take a ship out or not. So I haven't been there in the winter. I would love to go in the winter again. That's for Wakanai. And Nemuro was a nice town. Hokkaido is really country. But what I want to say about Hokkaido is it's different from Honshu. The people and the thinking and the way they move, to me, is different. It's very subtle, but it's different. It's not this rush, walk. Like the fastest walking people in the world, they say, is Osaka. Osaka is number 1 in the world for speed of walking, and Tokyo is number 2, in the world. This is data from 20 years ago. I don't know if it's still true, but in Hokkaido, it's a much slower pace. Even in Sapporo, a city of 2 million people, when I went to the bank and I was doing stuff, everyone's just kind of nice in the sense that it's not so rushed and it's not so intense. I can't really explain it, but I can just tell you that the people in Hokkaido are more not easygoing, but I just gotta say it's different. And one of the reasons is that when I was riding my bike around, all those people with little youth hostels and hotels and things or whatever, most of them were from Honshu originally. They loved Hokkaido and they went up. So they have a love for the state, the prefecture, the island, and they want people to come, and then they share this. So most people are not from Hokkaido originally, unless they're like 2nd or 3rd generation. And there's a word, I think it's called dosanko, which means you are like 2nd or 3rd generation. I mean, you are like a real resident, not someone who moved there. But the dosanko people are kind of proud. And like in Hawaii, we use the word kamaaina. That's kind of similar, like, oh, I'm kamaaina or I'm dosanko. Hokkaido is not that populated. It's not, because there's not that much work outside of agriculture and maybe fishing and logging and things. So, and tourism. So I love Hokkaido. Just a couple other things I would suggest. Nobody knows about Shikoku. Shikoku is an island, and the word Shikoku means 4 countries. Not countries, but 4 regions. So there's 4, it's like a pie divided in 4. Shikoku is probably the most unknown in Japan, and I always feel bad for them. Last year when we were in Imabari, we were cycling the Shimanami. For those of you who are interested, who likes to do bicycling or cycling, I would suggest there's a Shimanami Kaido, the coastal route that's one way 75 kilometers, and you can go just a little bit or you can go all the way through. Anyway, we couldn't get a reservation on the Hiroshima side. It goes Hiroshima to Shikoku. So we're on the Shikoku side. And for me, the sad part was that Shikoku was quite, I would say, economically depressed. There's not much going on in Shikoku, but it's still, to me, like the old Japan, because it's still very underdeveloped, mainly agricultural. Mikan, lemons, all come from there. And there's something called the Ohenro. It's the walking of the 88 temples. So if you want to do a pilgrimage, it's a Buddhist pilgrimage. You don't have to be Buddhist to do it, but you can walk the entire route that Kobo Daishi, the famous Buddhist monk, he created all those temples. I think he got the idea of Buddhism from China. He came over and they built. There is a pilgrimage that you can walk around the entire island, and there's 88 temples that each temple you can get like a step. And people stay at the temples, or you can stay at other, kind of small guest houses if you want, along the way. It's not free, you have to pay. And it's about 1,500 kilometers. So maybe 1,000 miles maybe. So not easy. It's kind of hilly. Takes 2 months. It's something that I always wanted to do, but it would take 2 months. And think of the cost of, let's say you're spending 6,000-7,000 yen a day for food and for lodging. That's kind of expensive, right? Or you can do it in parts. You can just do a week. You can do whatever you want. There are people who ride their bicycle around. I think it took a week. People who go on the bus. But the real way is the idea of a pilgrimage. Like you walk it. And if you want, you can get the white robe and they wear like the hat, like the kind of like you see a lot of times in Southeast Asia style, that kind of hat. You got your walking stick and you walk. And a lot of times it's for people who have suffered something through their lives and they're trying to kind of like reflect and deal with it. Like maybe your child died before you or something like that. Something really, really tragic. And so people do this route. And there are other smaller Buddhist routes to different areas of Japan, and I don't know them all, but they are, if you can probably go online and check. Like right now with YouTube and Google, most things you can find quite easily. The one thing that's kind of difficult, I would say, when you like go to rural Japan, like really rural Japan, and it just happened to me over last weekend, is that their systems like hotels and things are not modern and convenient like in the big cities. Let me give you an example. I did a Shimanami tour for my friends, and my friend Joe Lawton, he's 82 or 82 years old this year, his wife and things. This is, people who are a little bit older. I'm old too, but people a little older. And then last year, and then Joe, he wrote me because he said this is the final trip, the last time we're gonna meet. He was my boss at the Alaska State Fair when I was in Alaska when I was young, and he said to me, Mike, I gotta do the Shimanami one more time. And I'm going like, whoa, okay. So he's coming with 7 other people, his wife and 6 other people, and I'm gonna help them with that. But anyway, we were making a reservation at the Green Hills Hotel, which I had stayed at 2 Shimanami ago. And what it is they have it in, you try to go on booking.com or Agoda or things like that, and you cannot. It says no rooms available. So when I called, they told me, when I called about 8 months ago, they told me, okay, 6 months before we'll open up the rooms on booking.com and all that. Okay, well now it's 5 months before they leave. They come September. What happens is, so Joe was trying to get on, just block. So finally I thought it was strange. I asked my friend Yoshi, Mr. Shin Travel. He's a great travel helper. And he goes on in Japanese. And he goes, oh, you got to go not on the third party. You have to go directly on there. So I went on. And there's an English translation. And I tried to book rooms. No availability. I said, call Yoshi. I don't know what to do. And, I said, in my Japanese, it's going to be more confusing. My Japanese is not so good. Anyway, he called for me and he said, yeah, they have openings. And so Yoshi booked it for me and the confirmation came back to him. Now, several problems was that the web page in English was confusing and didn't work. Second, they don't use email. They only use fax, believe it or not. I was like shocked. But yeah, still places in rural Japan are still at that level. So again, when you're traveling out into rural Japan, you just have to be more mindful that maybe booking.com can't get you to every place, but you got to be a little creative sometimes, you know. Now, once you get there, everyone's really, really kind and nice. Everyone except the Imabari taxi drivers, which I did in one of my videos, which were the only people in Japan that I met. They were not friendly. But outside of Imabari taxi drivers, everybody was kind and very helpful. And a lot of times when you go to places that tourists don't go and they want tourists to come, they're extra nice because they're happy that you're there. So it's great, you know, you get great service, people are always friendly. So that's another reason to go somewhere. Here's another one. Is it good to get pocket Wi-Fi or eSIM card when traveling to Japan or not necessary? I would say, yes, it's good to have one or the other. I have not used an eSIM card because I have a Japan phone, but I use a pocket Wi-Fi sometimes when I have people coming to see me and I want to make sure I have enough for everyone to, in case of emergency. So there's some place called, I use iVideo, and the connection is not always that good, but it's something to have. But yes, you do want to have it because there are going to be places that don't have Wi-Fi. Japan is not as, okay, I'm going to give you my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. Technologically, everyone thinks Japan is like way ahead, you know, because they had like the supercomputers and they got like Toyota and they got all that. But really, daily life, like internet speed, access is still way behind. And they're very limited yet. So even like me, I try to get for here, this apartment, the highest level possible. But the system is like this. I'm living in an apartment complex, a mansion. And so the cable comes in and it's divided among all the different apartments. So you might not get the fast that you paid for because it's automatically divided among all here. Now, if you have a individual house, it would be separate. So there are little things like that. And, you know, like universities before COVID, they were so far behind. Japanese universities were like back 20 years. And even now, I would say they're still not caught up. You know, they talk a lot about doing these things. But so manage your expectations that your hotel will have usually. Now, when you go to rural Japan, I don't know how strong the internet is, but most hotels in main city Japan are quite good. But again, it's not strong like the United States. It's not powerful like the United States. And even when you got a pocket Wi-Fi eSIM card, sometimes, you know, like when I'm riding to work, I'm going through tunnels or country areas, it doesn't always connect up. So just so you be mindful of that is that don't expect the same internet experience that you get like in the United States. I don't know about other countries, but at least in the United States. Very, very different. Now, I've heard some foreigners say, wow, it's faster here in Japan or as fast as America. Well, maybe from their house or somewhere, maybe they are getting that. But personally, I have never been satisfied with the internet access and ability to get internet. And then a lot of times, if a place will say, oh, we have free internet here, right? And then there's this process. And this is what makes me a little bit crazy, is that this process is like, you got to jump all these hoops. And, you know, a lot of times it might be in English, but it's in the Japanese English. Either Google Translation translated it or they translated it and the explanation is difficult to follow. So it's like, you go through that. A lot of times you cannot connect. And it's like, so even if it's in English, and this is what you're going to find out too when you go to the JR station and you see those lines where you can wait at the counter or you can go outside and you can buy like the Shinkansen ticket from the machine. Now, you want a challenge? Do the machine. I never go to the machine because it's so confusing. And if there's a mistake and I get the wrong time or something happens, I still got to go back in that line and wait to get if I have to change it. Now, some people are very left brain. I'm right brain. But what I'm saying is that on those machines, it's in English, but the process is Japanese. So unless you really understand how it works, usually there's 2 or 3 extra steps you got to do, where in America, it'd be like 1 click, 2 clicks, boom. Or 1 click, you're in. In Japan, there's like 3 or 4. It's like jumping hoops. Again, anything with internet or even like using the machines, the train ticket machines, be prepared that if it's in English, it's going to take extra time. And that's why if you're following foreigners waiting in line at the machines, be prepared to wait longer because it's I wouldn't say complicated, but it's confusing. That's just my opinion. Okay, Anderson said, what part of Japan are the best The most popular mountains to climb. Oh, good question. You can go online and you can check, what mountains. But the best people are like, maybe, I don't know if there's Facebook groups about mountain climbing in English, but there are a lot of mountains to climb because 80% is mountainous, right? And when I was at working in Toyama-ken in Hokuriku, I went out with the Sangakubu. That's the mountain climbing club of the company. And they, every week or every other week, would be climbing some mountain in that area. So I don't know what the best mountain is, but, and this, I can say this is what I heard, the three god mountains of the god mountains are Fujisan, which you said, not Fuji, Mount Tateyama, which the mountain club, I did that, and everyone said, oh, it's easy, or it wasn't easy for me. If you have experience, it might be easy for you. And the third is Haku, Mount Haku. Those are the three. Again, everything in Japan, a lot of times is in threes. So Haku, Tateyama, and Fuji are so-called the mountain of the gods. But they have so many others, Tsurugi and all of these. I think you could just go in and Google that. I don't really know. It'd be nice if you had a friend who was part of a mountain climbing club. But there are a lot of Japanese who love to climb, And you know what? For me in Japan, the purest and the nicest people were the Sangakubu people, the people who climb mountains. I don't know why. And I think my theory is that these are people who, if you climb mountains, you cannot be a fake. You cannot be an imposter. You cannot, it's hard. It's super hard. So I think that anyone who climbs mountains, usually, at least in my case, 100%, were kind, humble, just good people. And so if you climb mountains and if you make friends with mountain climbing people, not just the fakey ones, but the real ones, I think you find a lot of really, really neat people to meet in Japan. And I think that goes to my final suggestion is that you want to meet as many people as you can and try to interact, because just going and being a tourist is no fun, right? Now my sister always wants to take me along with her because she feels like she wants the deeper story because I speak some Japanese, and there is truth to that. But on the other hand, if you cannot speak Japanese and you can only do so much with something like this, then the next best thing I would suggest is if you have a chance to meet someone who speaks English. Maybe it's the hotel front desk person that speaks some English. And if you can catch them off time, you can talk to them a little bit. Try and find someone, because as I said, although I said that in Japan, there's very few people who speak well in communicative English. They are out there, but they're just spread out so far. Or you could do something like in Kyoto. They have something called the volunteer. I can't remember exactly, but it's where university students volunteer to take guests around, foreign guests. Now, this was in play 5 years ago when I was working at the university, and we had a couple from Finland come, and I arranged that for them. It was free. I think you paid for the admission for the student and lunch. That's all. But you didn't have to pay anything. But they spoke English. It was a good chance for them to practice English as well as you could learn more about wherever you were going. So there are those kind of volunteer situations. Now, it's not going to be a professional guide. However, you get an opportunity to learn more about what the average Japanese person is thinking. I think that's what people want, right? It's not just to go through the motion and, think about it. Anybody going to a country, you're getting the front desk person, maybe the waiter at the restaurant, but you're not really talking. I think when you travel, and especially for people coming to Japan, it would be nice if you had opportunities to mingle or to interact. And so if you don't speak Japanese, then the next best is someone who speaks English, or someone like a student who wants to speak English. There's a lot of students who want to practice, and if you don't mind, working with them, you can get a lot out of it too. I mean, the idea is to create win-win situations, right? So if you can do that, 100%, I would say, try to get people who speak some English, and then the next, I guess, would be this. Now, as far as philosophical discussions and all, sometimes you just have to understand that that's not going to happen. But again, that would be in any country, right? Of course, you want to have more deeper discussions. Another thing that you could do if you want to talk about this is what I do when I go to a country. Like I was in South Africa once for a conference. picked up the English paper, read the paper. Oh, see, there's a teacher strike. Watch the news. They had English news on. Watch that. And then when I went out, now in South Africa, a lot of them do speak English, of course. So very different. But my whole thing was that if I could talk about topics that they knew, like I said, oh, I heard you folks have a teacher strike. How's that going? And they were like, oh, like you knew. So that also adds something like, if you know, then people are more inclined to maybe talk about different things. Now, the average Japanese usually doesn't know that much about politics or doesn't care that much about politics and stuff, but there are other things that they are interested, like drama or some movie star or whatever, or sometimes scandal, I don't know. But anyway, I'm just giving you some food for thought, like you talk about things that you can connect with people. I'm sure a lot of people want to talk about or want to know, like, what's the best onsen, or what's the best iced coffee or sake. It's so wide, and if I say something, it doesn't mean that it's the best. Again, I would say go onto YouTube and just type in the food and the thing, and usually you have enough videos to say. But what I also want to say is that someone like me, who's been in Japan 30 years, who doesn't like to wait, and is not a foodie, almost every place I go, it's fine. I'm satisfied, right? And occasionally I'll find some place that's really cheap and good. Like last week, and even before, we go to a tonkatsuya called Matsunoya. My name is Matsuno, but it's no connection. Matsunoya, and it's kind of a fast food tonkatsu place. Very, very cheap. The cheapest meal, rice, miso soup, cabbage, and tonkatsu is 570 yen. At today's exchange rate in the United States, that's what, $4. And so I like it there. You can eat as much rice and miso soup as you want, and you find it throughout. So something like that. I like those places. If I want to get in and out fast, easy. And my two foodie friends, Yoshi and Carrie-Ann, really like there. So if they say it's good, it must be good. There are places like that. But again, without exploring, like I go to another place, what is it called? Ideta, which is fast food, like tempura bowls. I don't know, like shrimp tempura bowls. A lot of it is just exploring. Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't know the system, and that's always a challenge, right? But more and more places are getting those. You buy, like Matsunoya is also the same. You put in the money, and they have an English explanation, and then you choose. But again, I was trying to go through the English on the Matsunoya. So confusing. It's like, it's hard to find, and they have it in English. And if there's people waiting behind you and they're trying to get in, you feel pressure and you feel stress. So, just be mindful of that. If you're in that situation, maybe go off time so you can take all the time you want. Or if there's, like what I did once is I had a Japanese person stand next to me and I said, I want to get this. How do I do it? And he helped me. Of course, I said it in Japanese, but even I think he said English. You just look at him and go, gestures are great in Japan. And like you point to the tonkatsu's dish you want or something and just go most Japanese are really, really helpful. And that's why I said, this is like the best place to travel if you want safety, kind people. You don't have to worry about crime very much. Yes, Japan has bad people and there are murders and there is crime. But compared to every place in the world, it's still maybe the safest country in the world per capita for that many people, I think. So, any place, even if you're taking your family, you want to go someplace, you don't have to worry, right? So let's say you get off the wrong bus stop or the wrong train stop in Japan. You don't have to worry like, oh, I'm in the wrong neighborhood or whatever, right? You never have to worry about that. If you're out in the country, right, and you're lost, you don't have to worry that someone's going to rob you or, kidnap you or whatever. And that's, to me, a given, I think, in a society, that it should be safe, that you don't have to worry about your things too. Even just yesterday, I had my my camera, not this, but I had my 360 camera, and we went to Minoa Falls. I went with the other two from the Hokkaido business trip, the bicycle trip. I left my camera on a bench, and then I was so, sometimes I have 2 or 3 cameras, you're trying to figure out which one. And then maybe 15 minutes later, I'm like, okay, let's go. I lost the camera. I couldn't find it. Gosh, so I started to panic. It's not a cheap Insta 360 camera. I'm like looking around. And my friend Titis from Indonesia, she went to look, and then she found it like 4 benches down. I had left it. But again, Sasuga Japan. Sasuga means as we can expect from the great Japan. Sasuga Japan, it was there. So those are small things, but they're actually really big things too. So again, highly recommend Japan. Try to avoid crowded times if possible. Even if you come during a busy time, go out early in the morning unless you're on a tour. If you're on a tour, maybe it cannot help. But if you can go out at 7, go see Kyoto at 7 in the morning. Not all the temples are open yet, but you can do the walking around. Do what the main people are not doing. So that would be my suggestion. What do you suggest a tourist does if they leave or misplace an item like you did? Lost and found. Okay, great question. So what happens if you left something on the train? Well, right away you would go to that train station person. Now, this is where it takes a little bit challenge, and you might need this if they don't speak English. There's a word called wasuremono, which means lost and found. And you tell them, and then they usually will call, like they're going to ask you where did you get off, what time, and they're going to try and track it. I'll tell you, I'm going to end this with, I'll tell you the story of my situation. I used to travel a lot. I used to be the International Center Director of Osaka Gakuen University for a long time, 10 years. And I used to do a lot of business trips. And when you come back, you're all like jet lagged, right? So normally I'm always carrying a backpack on one shoulder. So I always have one. This is kind of like, almost like, that's your unconscious memory. Well, when I come back from a trip, normally I'm bringing back like omiyage. Omiyage is like souvenirs from another country. So I'm carrying it in this other hand, got the backpack. And I always did the stupidest thing is that on the train, there's a high rack, but it's crowded train. So I would put everything on the top there and just ride the train. And I would kind of space out, jet lag, get to my transfer point, get on the other train and start going to the university. I go, I don't realize until 2 stops down. And this happened twice now. I left the backpack on the rack and I had the omiyage just in my mind. I'm holding something. I panic, call my office. They called the train. Then at the end of the line, they had the conductor. He went out and he checked. And fortunately, it was there 2 times. Now, this is really, really lucky. In fact, one of these days, it's not going to be there. But 2 times I had my computer and my camera. And if I lost that, everything was in there. So yes, on the train, you go directly to that station that you got off at. You return to that station and you tell them and they help you track it. Now, another thing I did, and I made a video of this. If you're interested, you can look at the video. My red Columbia jacket, which I love, I forgot it on the train. I put it on the rack. Same problem. So you probably don't want to do this. Just put it on the rack unless you're sure you can remember. So it was hot, took it off, put it up there, put my backpack. Normally I put my backpack on the jacket so you can see it, when you do it. But for whatever reason, I think I had my back. I can't remember. But the jacket. Then I got off the train and go, oh, shoot. So I go to the train master. Same thing, explain to him. He calls. They call the train. Oh, no more. He gives me a number. He goes, okay, this is the lost and found department. You can call tomorrow and see if they found it or not. I said, okay, really disappointed. So go home, try to call then, nothing. Next day, call, nothing. So I said, okay, well, I guess you can't win them all, right? It's only a red Columbia jacket, although it's my favorite. Anyway, what happens is 3 days later, I get a call from them because I also left my name when I called. And they said, did you leave a red jacket? And I said, yes. And they said, can you describe it? And what's in the pocket? I said, well, I had like yellow gloves or something. And they go, okay, come down and pick it up. So I go down the next day and pick it up. It was there. So it's usually, this is what I love about Japan. People respect other people's property. They're not going to take it just to take it, or because they need it. People usually will leave it and not touch other people's things. Just like yesterday at the Mino Falls when I left my Insta camera way down there for about 15 minutes by itself, no one took it. And so I have to be more careful because one of these days it's not going to be there. And it's not always the Japanese you worry about. Sometimes I know, I don't want to say it's the foreigners, but sometimes they're foreigners too who you have to be careful of. Like just in the news this past week where this robbery injury kind of case where there's like 4 places that people were broken into, and 2 of them were Vietnamese nationals actually. So it's not always the Japanese. Sometimes you have to worry about the foreigners too, So again, be careful. But again, this is the maybe the safest, at least to me, the safest country in the world. I mean, Korea is also safe, and Thailand is quite safe and all, but I think Japan is maybe the safest. And again, I don't have data for that, but with 127 million people, wow. Oh, one more thing is if you drop something along the way, like you're walking and somehow you lost, you can go to the koban, the police box that's closest to that, and they can help you with lost and found also. You know, like I found keys, I found an iPhone here close to my house. I always took it and I left it with the koban people. They usually ask for your name, and it's funny, they ask me for my ID and they have to copy my ID. I don't know why. It's like, I brought it in, I'm not taking it. And then they ask a really interesting question. Do you want to call back from the person if they come to collect it? I guess basically saying, do you want a thank you call from this person? And I always say, oh, no need. I mean, you can think if they do it on their own, great, but it's not like you want to make it a requirement that, yes, have this person call me and thank me. I mean, that's the way I'm reading it. I could be wrong, but that was one of the odd questions that I got when I was at the police box, was that, you know, do you want a phone call back if they come? And I just didn't understand exactly. But anyway, the Japanese koban, that's the police box that you'll see. Japanese police are really, really nice. Everybody's usually very helpful. Recently, they don't come out. They used to always be sitting in the front on the desk, but there were a couple incidents a couple years back where somebody was coming in and they, I don't know, for whatever reason, they moved and they stabbed one of the policemen a couple times. This happened a couple times. And so now they're more wary. There's usually no one there except the busy kobans. And what happens is that they, you ring the bell and then they'll usually come out, you know, and that's what I did here. And they look at me kind of strangely, you know, like, because my Japanese is not so good. Well, there's one more question here. Would you be interested in being a tour guide in the future? Yes and no. Yes is that, yeah, I don't mind because I want people to have a great time, you know, but no, it's like, the hard part is that it takes a lot of time and money. I think I would do like really high-end tours, like somebody who, like 10 people, you know, do like the ultimate tour, and then get my friend Yoshi. Him and me would be taking the tour, and at the high end, and we would design something that no one else could do, you know, something like, I did that in Alaska before when I was taking my relatives from Fresno and my homestay father and my mom and dad along, but something like that, something unique. But otherwise, I would rather just cheer you on and say, "Ganbatte kudasai." One more question from Star. Thank you, Star. Final travel pitfalls or things to avoid when traveling in Japan. Okay, last question. Don't catch the train during rush hour. That's 7 to 9 on weekdays and probably 5 to 7:30 in the evening. Unless you want that experience. I think everybody should do it once if you have time. Do the rush hour just to see what the average Japanese salaryman or salarywoman goes through in the morning. And if you're in Tokyo, there's the Yamanote line, which is the one that goes in a circle, and they all come out. So they all come in from the suburbs and they ride this Yamanote line. The Yamanote line is busy, but not like these lines. These lines coming in are way more. So if you take any of these lines, or even experience the Yamanote line that goes around like that, I think you would get an experience of just how crazy it is. None of these salarymen or salarywomen are riding 1 hour, hour and a half in packed situations. And after you do it once, I think you have more empathy for like, wow, maybe I don't ever want to live in Japan as a salaryman, right? And yeah, it's crazy. You're literally crunched, right? Like that. And, especially during COVID time, and I'm sure, that's why that was a big problem because, even with a mask on, you're like, the word sushizume in Japan is like packed like sardines in Japanese. They are literally packed. So I would say don't do that. Another thing is that if you're going to buy tickets, like JR Pass, Rail Pass, there's several different people who say different things about this. Initially, it was cheaper. Now I heard it went up 5 times. So definitely not worth it. Even before when it was cheaper, unless you were doing a route from Tokyo to Hiroshima and back, there you would get your money back. But if you're just going Tokyo, Osaka, and Tokyo, maybe you'd break even. It wasn't any big deal. So, and people always think, wow, now I have the, like the pass. I can ride all the JR things, right? But there's a lot of places like in Kyoto. You want to take Kintetsu maybe to Nara. That's private. Or you want to take Hankyu. And the private lines usually are a little bit cleaner, a little bit faster. If any line is late, it's usually a JR line because they do all the far routes and things, and then they come into the city, they're behind. So yes, there are like ferries to Miyajima. You can take the JR one versus the private one. I would say it's not such a big deal. And the reason is that it gives you more flexibility if you don't have to use JR, as well as I think the Shinkansen, they only had, you could use Hikari. So there's Nozomi, which is the fastest, and then Hikari and Kodama. They're like, Super Express, Express, and regular on the Shinkansen line, the bullet train line. The Nozomi, you cannot use the Nozomi with the rail pass. You can only use Hikari. Now, that's not a big deal because it's only like half an hour difference or something like that. If you don't have the pass, then you could take Nozomi, or you have more flexibility. You can change the plan up, If not, you're kind of being dictated by using, JR. Another problem is people think they're saving money. You are saving money with the JR pass, whether it's, even when it was cheaper, if you're moving constantly. So if you're going somewhere every day, like I had one friend, him and his wife, they came in and they're from Tokyo, they were going to Nagoya one day and back, and then they came to Kyoto and they were moving. That's fine. The problem with that is though, you cannot stay in a place very long, or you have to carry your bags with you to the next place, or you just got to go and come back in one day because your hotel is in maybe Tokyo is your base. It's actually, to me, more of an inconvenience that you are now tied to the maximizing your value of the pass. So if you're just going like one day here, one day here, one day here, one day here, okay, great. But if you want to go and say 3 days here and then maybe 4 days here, because the lengths are 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? And the price goes up. So again, a lot of people think I'm saving money. Not necessarily, and especially with the price going up 5 times as well. Now again, maybe if you're doing a route from Tokyo to Hiroshima or to Fukuoka and back, but again, you got to do that within the time period, then maybe it's okay, it's good to get. But if you're just doing like, Tokyo, Osaka, and then flying out or whatever, probably not. But again, you got to measure it, and it depends on the yen rate. So that's another thing I would say be careful about. Also, Japanese trains, like if you have a group, you got to be careful, like, especially if you do it, during a busy time, that, it takes time. Always allow time. Do not, some people want to make it like, oh, I just want to get there just at the time. Allow yourself 10, 15 minutes, or even between changes and things. Allow yourself some time because you have a group. It's confusing. You might go to the wrong platform and on and on and on. So don't do that because it stresses you out. The idea is to alleviate stress and to make it fun and enjoyable. But I hope you enjoyed this or got something out of it. I hope more people ask questions or things that they want to know. And if I can answer it, I'd be happy to give you at least my insight. Not that it's correct, but I think I'm giving you my insight as someone who's been in Japan for 30 years and being American, Japanese American, And, there's a whole other thing about being Japanese American, right? Having this face, having the name Matsuno, that is different than if I was Caucasian or white. And so that's a whole nother live or video, because again, or if you're Asian American or Japanese American, how you're treated or how people look at you are going to be different than if you are Caucasian or African American or you look as a foreign. That's a whole other thing, and it's kind of fun. You can't change the way you look, so you just accept and you deal with the best way. You can't change the cards that are dealt. You can only change how you play those cards, right? Thank you very much, and I hope to see some of you in Japan, or at least cheering you on that, I hope you'll come to Japan, because I came as an exchange student over 40 years ago. It made a huge impact on me, and I'm still here. Originally I had actually wanted to go to Kenya, University of Nairobi, to study Swahili, and when that program closed because they didn't have enough people, I ended up in Japan. I was actually very disappointed because I wanted to go somewhere where it didn't have people who looked like me. But even coming here, it just blew my mind about like how different it was and how amazing, And at that time, 40 years ago, Japan was still very, very, there's no internet. You got to do everything by, hand to hand, right? But anyway, I'm still here. Love Japan. I hope some of you can come. And thank you for those of you who I know. Thanks for coming on just to be nice and support me. For those of you the first time, hope to see you again. Maybe in 2 weeks I'll do another one. Really appreciate it. And signing off. See you again, everybody. Bye-bye.